Precisely. So I think the question of whether or not they'll cut or not is obviously been answered now by the September minutes. So now it's up for Powell to confirm or give any guidance on what he thinks is the appropriate path for monetary policy. Now, I don't think he's going to pre-commit to a specific easing path. Instead, I think that he's going to frame it as they will be data dependent and they will let the data guide them in terms of their decisions. But instead, I think a lot of his speech will focus on the risks of perhaps being too aggressive with rate cuts versus being too late to cut rates. And I think his comments will really focus in on trying to find that middle ground, which helps to maintain or safeguard the economic expansion whilst ensuring that inflation remains contained.
Is it fair to say, though, that the unemployment risk is up, the inflation risk is down, and that means that 50 basis points should be on the table?
Well, that was certainly what was communicated in the minutes, that was what the officials thought in terms of that kind of the risk of the balance of risks. I personally, well, at least in the Schroders economics team, we don't think that 50 basis points is going to be the right call. We think that would send the wrong message to markets in terms of the pace of easing, but also because there's so much uncertainty about where our star lies at the moment, this sort of neutral rate, which is neither too stimulative nor too accommodative for monetary policy. So we don't think that 50 basis points is quite on the table.
Okay, so steady as she goes with 25 in September. That's the house call right now?
That's the house call. You know, we'll see what Powell says tomorrow. But I don't think this speech is going to be about September. I think the September question, you know, that sort of 25, 50 basis point question, that will be answered by how the data evolves. We're going to get another payrolls print. We're going to get another inflation print before then. We're going to get further information on how the economy is performing. But we've also got ample opportunities for the Fed speakers to come out and give further guidance there. Tomorrow is very much going to be about the more longer term view for the Fed.
You know, I'm actually quite surprised that markets are holding up today, all things considered, because it was the NFP in July that spooked the markets. It basically was one of the reasons we saw that significant Monday sell down. But what we've seen now is the release of the minutes also coming just hours after the US Labor Department came out with this shocking revision to jobs growth, really adding to concerns about the trajectory of the labour market here. So what do you think that does for Powell now that we have this huge triple-digit number in front of him to digest?
I think it serves as a reminder not to take the data at face value necessarily and to look at a whole sort of host of economic indicators. But I don't think it's going to be an overriding concern for the Fed because ultimately the data relates to the 12 months to March. We don't know where those revisions have come from. They could have been towards the start of that 12-month period, which if you recall back to last year, we had that mini banking crisis. Perhaps we saw a lot of softness around that period, or maybe it was spread across. But either way, even if you account for those revisions, which by the way might still get revised in February when the VLS gives the full revision to the benchmark, ultimately that's still suggesting a payrolls print, which is possibly or probably above the neutral pace. And so I don't think it really changes the dynamic. You know, if you're on the Federal Reserve right now, the FOMC, you ought to be looking more, you know, ahead. So looking at the leading indicators, the layoffs rate is at the joint lowest since the series began in 2001. And I think the payrolls still in the August print, or the July print, as you pointed out, they were depressed, but I think the hurricane had an element of that, so they should unwind in August.